Today, in the United States, only 2.5% of the land outside of Alaska is protected or managed as wilderness, and only 13% on a global scale. This raises a question as to what values society places upon wilderness. What a region, state, or country decides to preserve or not to is a direct reflection of the values of those people. Having worked as a guide in and on the wilderness edges of the Superior National Forest in Minnesota and in the rainforests of Costa Rica, I've seen vast wildernesses and the biodiversity they contain. I have also seen the encroachment of man upon the wilderness, and I wonder, how do we find the balance between exploitation and preservation? Does the answer lie in our spiritual connection with nature? Wilderness areas provide valuable ecological services, such as controlling water runoff, filtering air and water, regulating climate change, and preserving biodiversity, as well as cultural and spiritual significance. Ecologists and conservation biologists believe that to ensure biodiversity, there must be a global network of protected areas. Wilderness areas cushioned with buffer zones and corridors to allow for wildlife to move amongst these areas. However, of the 12% of wilderness areas on the earth, only half are managed as wilderness or as nature preserves. A great part of the problem of wilderness loss is in how humanity views and values nature. Environmental activist and author Gottlieb points out that much of the Western world finds their values in the Old Testament of the Bible. Many religious and political leaders have interpreted Genesis 1:26 through 28 to mean that man is meant to dominate nature. As the environmental leader Gus Speth said, "This view of the natural world, that nature belongs to us rather than us to nature, is powerful and persuasive, and has led to much mischief. There is, obviously, an overall lack of stewardship towards the earth, and very little environmental wisdom. By changing our view of nature through environmental education, ecotourism, and through spirituality, we will change industry and politics forever as more individuals come together to make a difference." Most people have a limited understanding of ecological services. Environmental education introduced to children at a young age can help instill an environmental ethic and likely foster a deeper connection to nature and a reverence for all life. Ecotourism can generate revenue for a region or country while preserving wilderness areas. For example, logging in national forests supplies about $4 billion annually to the U.S. economy, while recreation and ecosystem services can add over $220 billion each year. Having worked as a guide for an adventure company in Costa Rica, I have seen firsthand how there's a pride in the people and a strong connection with the jungles and the rivers. While many of the other Central American countries have problems with pollution, overpopulation, and land loss, Costa Rica has pura vida, or pure life as the locals call it. With over 25% of its land in natural preserves and national parks, and housing 6% of the world's biodiversity, Costa Rica generates over $1 billion a year in tourism dollars. Northeastern Minnesota has also set a prime example of the value of wilderness preservation. The Superior National Forest encompasses over 4 million acres, including the 1 million acre Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. In addition, the network of state parks, wildlife management areas, and nature preserves has helped create wildlife corridors and preserve ecological services. This land of lakes and rivers boasts the highest population of gray wolves in the lower 48 and is home to black bear, moose, lynx, pine marten, and other species that need wilderness or vast tracts of forest to survive. These wilderness areas and parks generate millions each year to the local economy, and more importantly, there's a strong human connection to the land here. As in anything in life, people will not change unless they care. Science and logic usually do not have the power to motivate as much as the emotional and spiritual connection. Nature laureates like Thoreau, Muir, Leopold, and Sigurd Olsen have helped connect people with nature. As Henry David Thoreau most aptly put it, "In wilderness is the preservation of the world." Spiritual connections with the natural world are what have helped us preserve wilderness. Recently, religion is proving to be a huge asset in helping to protect nature. Eco-theology calls for the care of all God's creation and views humanity as stewards of the earth. Among spiritual and ethical environmental philosophies, there is deep ecology, where all life has value. Biodiversity sustains all life, and sustainability is the key to the future, and we have an ethical duty to uphold these beliefs. As former director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Molly Beatty said, "What a country chooses to save is what a country chooses to say about itself."